Hello, and welcome to your spiritual journey. Right now, your soul is speaking to you. I'm Jenny Israel, and I'm a medical intuitive, energy healer, spiritual activator, counselor, and teacher. It is my mission to help you learn the tools you need to heal your life and discover your deeper purpose. In each episode, I will allow Spirit to speak through me, and we will explore energy forecasting, teach you how to raise your vibration for overall wellness, increase your emotional intelligence to open up joy in your life, and guide you into spiritual evolution using topics such as energy healing, emotion code, sacred geometry, numerology, tarot, crystals, channeling, and much more. Take a deep inhale, let it out, and listen to your soul speak to you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Soul Speak with Jenny Israel. This is your Soul Tribe Saturday report and podcast. And today I am very excited to introduce you to Ruby. Ruby and I have known each other for a couple of years now. And I really wanted to get her on to talk to all of you about her own journey and then how that has influenced where she's going as a professional. And what I find really important about this conversation is that she's 22 and newly 22. And I think that we've done a really good job of covering a completely different age group, of what spiritual awakening looks like for women in, the 30s, 40s, 50s range, when we were established already as moms or inside of our careers, and started to have these, midlife health crises and, things like that popping up. And that landscape is something that's been very well established, but we have yet to have a conversation with a young person who's also gone through this and is still going through this, to see what that looks like, as far as a real spiritual awakening inside of what is also health. And so I'm going to let Ruby tell you her story, first of all. And Ruby she's a certified health coach, and she's in the process of her way through her certification to become a nutritional specialist. And a lot of her background currently, inside of what she does is inside of the realm of women's health and empowerment. And I think for good reason. Her own health path, as she'll tell her testimonial, led into a lot of that. And so I'm going to ask her to give her story first, and then kind of allow her to show us how that bridged into what would be an amazing connection inside of what she does for others that incorporates this body-mind connection. So, Ruby Jusas.
Hello. I am so excited. Thank you so much for having me. This is really such an honor, and you have been such a big light and driving force in my story and my awakening as well. So a big thank you to you. I'll just kind of start off. I like to kind of relate this back to childhood, right? So as a child, our hearts are open to loving to its fullest capacity and literally living out loud, right? But along our journey into adulthood, as we get older, we're meant to make decisions with our minds rather than our hearts, causing that to disconnect to our emotions, what we truly want, and can even bring up feelings of fraud, right? That false sense of identity as we get used to doing the right thing. And you can't see this, but I'm using quotations around doing the right thing, because we begin to agree to or go along with things that maybe don't resonate with our core values and our core beliefs. And I personally tend to fall into that people-pleasing spectrum, if you will. And I found myself somewhat lost as to what my identity truly was, what my God-given strengths actually were. And all I had to go by was what other people thought of my actions, the way I held myself with kindness. And I categorized myself, as just that nice girl who made people feel good, feel pleased, leaving only one important character in my story unpleased, which was myself. So really it all started at the age of 18. I was diagnosed with the autoimmune disease Hashimoto's. I had PCOS, pelvic floor dysfunction, and anxiety, all coupled together really at this one point in time. And it really seems like everything had come to a head at that point. I was exhausted of feeling like, why me? My systems were offline. My body, mind, and soul literally had been switched on to the static station of the radio, like I like to compare it to. And really, with just like my exhaustion driving me, I surrendered. I ignited my prayer and my faith. I focused on loving my body and not shaming it for the inconveniences that it was putting me through. And I looked inward at the emotions that were coming up for me, what they meant, and how they reflected into other areas of my life. Because my motto now is, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So, one of the big realizations I've found along the way and continue to find is that awareness will become the best of friends in your life. I coach my clients on bringing awareness to their systems, but what I found was emotions that come to the surface, like, for example, for me, the fear of rejection, guilt, worrying about what other people think about you, are not coming up to keep you stuck or to take away from your well-being or your success per se, but they're coming up in order for you to become aware of them and to let them go, because these thoughts do not serve you anymore. They didn't serve me. And oftentimes we get caught up in the drama of these thoughts and the emotions that come with them. But I realized that the body doesn't want you to hurt. It wants you to heal, and it wants you to move forward. So we can we bury these emotions down with the I will deal with this later mentality, right? Like, I'm guilty of this. And then later rolls around and it brings about visions, limiting beliefs, emotions from the past. And that's really the body's kind of like assertive way of saying, I'm ready to get this gunk out of here. Because at this phase in my life, this is something that no longer serves me to believe and to hold on to. So that was another big piece of my journey that I really had to come to terms with. I had to, surrender. That was a big, especially in quarantine, like my ultimate goal in life is to constantly be growing, constantly be trying to meet the person, I was put here to be. That's my ultimate goal. So, with emotions coming up, and, this is going to be an ongoing journey for me, emotions coming up, I realized that it's not to hold me back. It's meant to push me forward and to go into the next phase of my life, because these limiting beliefs, I've outgrown them. And, this is where the emotional fitness, like Jenny has mentioned before, comes into play, right? Like being able to know what is true to you, know the foundation of what you value as an individual. How do we build trust with ourselves? This was something I really, really, wanted to dive into. How do we tap into at least 2 to 3 of the God-given strengths that only we can bring to the table? Because again, I believe we were all born with blessings, with gifts, with an ultimate purpose that only we specifically and uniquely can fulfill. It's like our destiny. I personally think the recipe, if you're going to ask me, what the recipe of a happy and fulfilled life is to tap into these gifts. And how you use them or how you chase them is the story of your life. So I'll ask you this. This is something that has really, been big for me. And I'll say slowly. Do you ever think about what you think about? So I'll say one more time. Do you ever think about what you think about? Because are your thoughts chaotic? Are they focused on the past? Are they focused on fears or limiting beliefs or worst case scenarios? Because your attention, where your energy goes, your attention flows. And this can work both for and against us. And I've experienced both. So I'm a great, perfect spokeswoman for it. When we focus on blessings, gratitude, success, growth, we begin to only see those things because we're constantly looking for it. And our brain begins to filter out anything that doesn't align with those things. But consequently, when we focus on our problems in our lives, we only see or even attract more problems. So this is why the mindset of things are happening for you and not to you is a great way to switch from that fixed mindset to one of growth, seeing your challenges, as opportunities. And this, again, was a huge theme in my whole journey.
So Ruby, I want to ask you, because
Yeah.
it occurs to me that there's probably actually quite a few people listening to this that have kids
Hmm.
your age or near your age. And I want to ask you, so I mean, the
Yeah.
majority of what we're looking at between ages 18 and now, I mean, this is your college life. And I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of insight as to, I mean, as we know, that this is it's a path of destruction so we can rebuild, right? And
Hmm.
so there was the health crisis itself, but
Hmm.
can you give us a little insight as to how this affected just your life structures in general of being a young person and going through this?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I mean, it's so interesting because now I'll try to look back, right? And I've almost have blocked out. It's the same idea of like, burying these deep emotions, these deep pains that we go through. When I was in college, mainly this kind of manifested for me. I've always, been more on the emotional side, I'd say, from when I was younger. I was a competitive figure skater, so I was in that whole environment my whole life, constantly striving for perfection, constantly striving to, be better than your competitor. So that was tough as a young girl. But in college, when kind of all these things came to fruition for me, was it affected all aspects. It affected friendships. It affected, the way I looked at myself, the way I looked at my life. It affected my schoolwork. Um, there were some days, where I was like, why can't, I just be normal? Like, why me? Like getting into that whole idea, why me? I couldn't go out like my other friends could because I was exhausted or I had a headache or I was sick. Um, and I really, that in that moment, I was just like, how does one keep going at this age like this? It's not a fun and easy road at that point when you're faced with those emotions, the physical and the mind. You have the anxiety, you have the physical ailments going on, like the headaches, the nausea, the sick, having that autoimmune condition where you're constantly susceptible to, you're in a college campus, you're constantly susceptible to the new illness on the block. So that was a piece. And then the soul, like not being in touch with my identity, not knowing who I was, following the pack. So that was a big struggle for me in that time. But like I mentioned, igniting the faith, showing love to my journey and being there for my healing, because it didn't have to be linear, and accepting that and building off of that was a huge turning point for me.
When do you think that happened? Is there like a moment that you identify as like, I'm sure there's been many
Hmm.
turning points in the
Hmm.
process of peeling that onion back, but
Hmm.
is there one that stands out for you as that turning point when you started to really understand a deeper connection between the mind and the body and the faith and all of that?
Yeah, so one particular instance comes to mind. Um, so I had, when I was going through my, autoimmune treatment with a doctor, multiple doctors, there are a couple, like elimination diets that you had to follow and things like that. So there was one I remember, it was super strict, but I'm totally up for a challenge anytime. So I was like, I got this. Printed out all the papers, hung them up in my dorm room, like I was ready to go. And I did it. I stuck with every recommendation for 3 months, cold turkey, did everything to a T. And I felt really good. I genuinely felt like awesome. And then my blood work results had come back and everything had gotten worse than when I first started. So for me, seeing all the hard work that I put in and feeling better, but at the same time, seeing how, my levels have progressed was really a turning point, because I ultimately was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm done. I'm done. I don't understand.
It's like
I
I just studied for 3 months straight and got a giant
Yes.
F on my exam.
I was like, are you kidding me? What the heck? But then I went kind of backwards. I was like, I'm gonna have alcohol. I'm gonna go back to eating all the foods that I couldn't. And in that moment, as I was, bringing these foods back in, and I started to again not feel so good again, I started realizing, what, this is something bigger, right? Like, it isn't just about, what a doctor is going to tell me or what my levels are going to say. It's how I view myself and how I can rely on myself and empower myself to be comfortable in doing what works for me, and to be comfortable in doing what makes me feel good and feel like my, my most authentic and best self. And if eating, foods that, because when I was following that program, I was feeling good. So if eating those foods and focusing on my mindset and getting back in touch with my core values, my core beliefs was going to make me feel good, then I was going to do that. It wasn't about, I kind of relate it to almost like being able to know that you hold the key to your healing, that knowing that when all else fails, you still have you. And that's a big piece of what I center my work on today and aspire to as I continue through, that you are the expert at you. So you can get all different answers, all different places, and they can look all different ways. As I showed you, like I felt good, but my results said no, and we wanted to try a new plan. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you, and you're the expert at you. You know what's going to fill your cup the best to make you, the best version of you.
Well, that couldn't have, I have to imagine that couldn't have been an easy thing to go through as, now I'm in my mid 40s, and I look back at those years of college were like the best years of my life. It was like throw caution to the wind and just make some really bad decisions. It was like that forgivable time that we have in our life where we can, do those crazy things and still have plenty of time to recover from it. But to actually have the awakening come at you at that point in your life, that could not have been easy, from a social structure perspective, from, all of it.
Yeah, no, it definitely, like, even now as I continue to go through my growing process and, like I mentioned, continue to level up to who I'm meant to be and getting closer to that ultimate purpose, my God-given strengths, it has brought me all different ways. It has brought me to feel lonely. It has brought me to feel, isolated, confused, because I'm like, why isn't everyone else on the same page as me right now? Everyone grows and heals and develops at their own time and their own, frequency in space. So I was almost feel blessed to go through what I went through, because I knew from that early age that I was meant to be, in this nutrition and wellness community. I watched food, literally save me. And I felt this urging, almost like call to action to ensure I could support and guide more people in their own healing and wellness journeys. Because I just felt like, more people had to know about this amazing life force energy that food was fueling me with, and my, my self-care and my self-love and finding out my strengths was doing for me and transforming for me. So as it was difficult to, at times wrap my head around, I feel so grateful to have gone through it at a young age. And for every experience, I don't regret anything in my life. I've kind of like, gone past that, because I really do feel everything happens for your greater purpose, and your things are put into your life to strengthen you, to level up, like I was mentioning. And, when I first started with my whole healing process with food and things like that, I focused on adding in. I was always told, like, nutrient dense foods, right? And I was like, what the heck is a nutrient dense food? And it's literally just fuel for your cells, like fuel for the beautiful machine you're given. That's how I viewed it. And not only does food have macronutrients, like our protein, carbs, fats, but they have micronutrients, the things that are almost like our cells' little battery packs, like your vitamin A, B, D, potassium, magnesium, all these things. And when they work in harmony, it's literally, the cells utilize these nutrients in every which way, for muscle growth, phase 1 and 2 liver detox, energy, repairing and clearing. It makes up who we are. So it's really turned me into like the little nutrition nerd I am today. And yeah.
So I mean, you mentioned the limiting beliefs, and
Mm-hmm.
you know that that's like one of the core of my whole process,
Mm-hmm.
for my clients. But I want to know, what does that look like for a 20-something-year-old who's getting in touch with herself really for the first time and understanding even what a limiting belief is,
Mm-hmm.
like identifying that, and then what did that look like in your life? How was your life mirroring that at you?
Yeah, so definitely a bunch have come up for me. A big one that I really struggle with, and at times, even struggle with, was I'm not enough. That was a big one. Whether I was looking at myself in the mirror, or whether it was in relationships, even sometimes with family life, I would just always come back to the root of it all would be, I'm not enough. And that was something I believed for a long time. Then I even also realized that I was kind of associating that with like destination happiness syndrome. I don't know if anyone's, experienced that, but that kind of brought me into a world of consistently thinking that I would not be happy until I was at a specific place in time in my schooling, my career, my specific weight. That was a big one for me. So the things were coming up around that. And that reflected again, like into different areas, into my emotional eating, into the way I viewed myself, and the places I put myself, like in relationships and environment. I believe that you are almost a product of your environment. So the quality of your life is dependent upon the quality of your relationships, your environment. So putting myself in places that maybe didn't align with the core of who I was, but what that limiting belief brought me to believe. So that was a big, yeah, big, limiting belief in my whole process of where I am.
And now you've decided that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to take on the world and be an entrepreneur.
Oh my gosh! Oh my god!
And so,
Yeah.
I mean, again, like what was that like? How did, okay, so this is the question. You chose to take on the limiting belief of I'm not good enough, and
Mm-hmm.
starting to turn that on its head by,
Mm-hmm.
doing new things.
Mm-hmm.
So inside of becoming this entrepreneur, inside of your passions,
Mm-hmm.
how has God given you opportunities to practice this new
Yes.
belief?
Oh my gosh! In so many ways, it's like the way I almost kind of coach it as well. When you don't believe something about yourself, and it very much so rings true for you, that limiting belief. Almost you have to kind of keep saying it until one day it clicks. So, I kept saying it, kept saying it, kept saying it, kept saying it. I was like, please, dear God, let me believe this one day. And, one day it really just did click. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I am enough. I'm more than enough, and I'm empowered, and I got this. So, that has brought me into so many different areas that have brought up some other things, some things that I'm still kind of trying to become aware of and identify, because it's a whole new world for me now that I'm believing I am enough. It brings a
Mhm.
whole new set of opportunities, not challenges, aka opportunities. Um, but yeah, walking into this whole entrepreneurial space, something I did not think, was in my 5-year plan after college. I just graduated in May 2020. So that was not something that I had accounted for, but something that almost I feel so called to do, when I'm thinking about different areas of my life and where it could go. I don't see myself anywhere else but right here in this moment, because, however that looks for me, I know that, I am enough, and I am enough to, coach and guide, and to be a friend, right? Like my coaching is really based upon, and a lot of, some of my clients will even say it's like we build this bond that's just like no other. And kind of walking into this, like, again, entrepreneurial space, it's something that, feels very different, feels very scary. It's like a lot of people will relate it to that Taylor Swift song. It's like happy and miserable, something at the same time. It's like, it's beautiful and miserable. It's like there's so many amazing, amazing opportunities, connections, just ways and, avenues to flourish and grow and spread, the mission statement really of empowerment and getting back to your ultimate story, your values, your beliefs. And then there's also things that are challenging. You're like, whoa, what the heck? How do I do this? but it's just kind of having that foundation and that core of, you know what? I love myself unconditionally. I am enough. No matter what happens, I got me. I will handle this. I'm never given anything that's too big for me. So that's been really big in this whole, process too.
Now, I already know the answer to this because I get the benefit of getting the inside story from
Yes.
Ruby and our relationship. But I think that I want to address the age group that is close to you right now in this question, because I think that this is something that is a really important thing to learn, and the younger we can learn it, the better. I mean, obviously, this is going to be a message for anybody that's listening, but I want to talk about the distribution of our own personal power to the authority figures in our life, because I know that this has been a really big learning curve for you inside of coming into your own power. And I know that this is an issue for a lot of young ones in your age group, that they're not, it's like you're at an age where you're still looking for that outside validation of like, tell me who I am, tell me where I'm going, and giving that authority to these other places in your life. So I wonder if you might share just a little bit of your own testimony inside of, especially coming into being an entrepreneur and kind of like rowing your boat down a different stream than a lot of other young people your age. And so what is your message to other people your age, as far as that's concerned? Because I know that was a real roadblock for you.
Yeah, totally. And I'm, like I mentioned, I'm the total people pleaser. When someone, especially an authority figure, oh my gosh, but someone I look up to, they tell me something, I'm like, yes, sir. So that was something that was really tough for me, especially walking into the entrepreneurial space as well. Now having that really come into play, be like, Ruby, you have to address this. My body's like, this, you need to be aware of it and let it go, because this does not serve you to think this way anymore. So really, what has helped me in that is building my self-confidence, and really self-confidence would be dependent upon your trust that you have with yourself, how you can trust yourself. So really my message would be, again, just in order to build that self-confidence, don't break promises to yourself, trust yourself, build that friendship with yourself in order to, feel like you can bounce things off of yourself. It's like you're almost like your best friend in this. And no matter what, like I mentioned, no matter what, nothing can take that away from you. You will handle it. You can get through it. It's not a matter of other people and their thoughts and their authority and their view of you. It's your view of you. It's how you can execute that. It's how you can show that to the world. It's not going to be, in order to, I feel, be fulfilled and, feel empowered within this space, within feeling like, you're stuck within the authoritative space, is to, be able to set yourself apart, create yourself as an individual, and not as much, have your own beliefs, your own values, and separate those that are weighing on the external factors and the other people. So again, something I'm still trying to work through. But what I have, bottom line, what I have found to be helpful is building the trust with yourself, keeping promises to yourself, being there for you at the end of the day before you're there for other people, and putting yourself first. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's, you put it beautifully. And,
Thanks.
Also going back to some of the other things that you were saying about, reevaluating your core values and your faith. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
faith connection and trust is
Yeah.
so intertwined with faith. And, even now, in this next phase of my own journey, really learning
Mm-hmm.
that the only authority that I need to answer to is source.
Yeah.
And that everything else, it's, what do they call it, false idols, right, in the
Yeah.
scripture. But we've done a really good job of creating a culture and society that teaches people to divide their own personal power amongst those that they consider authorities in their life. And
Mm-hmm.
then we feel so lost and helpless, so we can't make our own decisions because of the fact
Mm-hmm.
that we're too busy worrying about, like, who's going to tell us what to do next,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately then we never actually take responsibility for the decisions that we're making, because it's like, well, that person told me to do this, or that sounded like a good idea, so I'm doing that, never really stopping to think about exactly what you said. Do you ever think about what you think about? And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually something that somebody else said something
Mm-hmm.
similar to me this week.
Mm-hmm.
That was it actually was from her Bible group,
Oh,
and
wow.
they were doing their scripture study, and the question came up. The provoking thought question was, what do you obsess about?
Mm.
What are you constantly thinking about? What is that thing that you obsess about? And that's where you got to go. You got to
Yes.
go into
Mm-hmm.
that thing. Are you obsessing over the results of what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing? Are you obsessing over the outcome? Like, is there issues of failure or success in there? Is there, like you were talking about, rejection,
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things. And so, it's what I think so special about you, Ruby, is that you were able to tune into this at such a young age, to start to realize that the only real authority that I have to answer to is myself and to
Mm-hmm.
God.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I feel inside of that
Mm-hmm.
space? So, this is kind of like a two-part question, but I feel like the
Sure.
answer is kind of going to be the same for both,
Okay.
because I do think that, outside of the fact that you're 22, and we talked about this last time we were together, it's like, I don't care what degree you have, like,
Mm-hmm.
your PhD comes through your life experience.
Yes.
And, so there's, how do you feel you do well working with any age group? But inside of that same question, I
Mm-hmm.
also want you to share your own personal results that
Mm-hmm.
you've been able to create through your own
Mm-hmm.
practice,
Yeah.
how your health has changed, how
Mm-hmm.
your body has changed. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we've gotten a very good idea of how your mind and faith has shifted.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that are listening to this going, oh, well, that's all well and good, but help me lose 20 pounds.
Yes. Yes.
And looking at the general age range of my audience, you're looking at, postpartum, you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at perimenopause, you're looking
Mm-hmm.
at, these different things. So I'd like you to show the results you've had inside of your own life,
Mm-hmm.
and that regardless of the age that you are, how these principles can apply to anyone.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. So my own, journey, like you said, the mind was a big one. My physical body, I was able to, luckily, working with amazing doctors and getting their amazing advice, I was able to reverse my Hashimoto's disease. So I no longer have it, no longer have the markers for it. I luckily caught it early. But again, a lot of that was, looking inward as well. I had the help I needed, the support I needed, the support group that I needed. And it was, I don't think I would have been able to be where I am today without in terms of my health, if I didn't look inward, if I didn't do the work within my own space to get better, to be kind and gentle with the journey, to allow things not to be linear. So that was a big one. I don't have PCOS anymore, for anyone listening. Not fun. I feel ya. Um, the anxiety went away after, my body was so inflamed. I had so all these things again to a head. Pelvic floor dysfunction. For anyone who doesn't know, it's really pretty much just like your pelvic floor is inflamed. Your muscles are really tight down there. It's really it's uncomfortable. It feels like almost you have UTI like all the time. Anyone who's had those, it's pretty painful. So that I no longer have. I've really really, just been able to luckily catch a lot of these things early. But again, heal in every which way to manifest like harmony within the systems, and to, so that's the mind, the body, and then the spiritual side, just being able to get in touch again with who I am, with what I believe, with what rings true for me. Um, and all of that really, bundled together makes for, where I am today. And the way I kind of apply that within my work is being able to kind of facilitate the change in guiding, and instilling the idea that, you are your biggest advocate at the end of the day, your biggest cheerleader at the end of the day. So I almost mirror that back within my sessions. So it's not really as much about me. It's really not about me in the sessions. It's all about you, and how can we instill and, flourish and empower this belief that it's there, the belief in you, it's there, it's there. I promise you, no matter where you are in your life, your belief is there. We just have to tap into it, harness your potential in that way, and allow that to flourish. And once we start to do that, we start to really, dive through the layers of limiting self-beliefs, of ways that we can overcome challenges that arise as we go, of tools that maybe can be helpful in maybe like just ideas that maybe would have never thought about, and we can kind of dive into that, and it can be totally transformative. So it's almost like I'm kind of your mirror in a way that we facilitate and guide the conversations, and it's almost like I help you talk yourself into change by the questions that I facilitate and we talk about. And of course, education's always there, but really my role is to be your partner in guiding and supporting your client-centered approach, your journey. And everyone's looks different. There's no one size fits all, but the base of it is just showing love for your journey, being there for the process, being there for the healing. As things come up, we identify, we become aware, we move through, we let go, we do what we need to do in that moment. And it's beautiful because, especially with weight loss, we can begin to see long-term change, because now we're touching on all systems. It's not just calorie deficit, right? Calorie deficits are huge, but what if there's an emotional piece there that's maybe causing, us not to physically be able to be in a deficit? Like, it's just too much. It's like almost puts the body into like a full shock. It's just like extra stress on the body that it doesn't need. Whereas we can really just focus on the stress piece and then just watch the weight fall off. It's really amazing as you begin to dive into different areas where the root is. And so, yeah, so that's really a approach that I use with all ages of clients, and building that trust, that bond, that we're in it together.
Well, I think it's very appropriate considering kind of where we're all going at this point, understanding. And I just did a little talk on this on one of my IGTVs where I talk about the difference between being separate from one another and being detached from one another, is like, the unhealthy version of separation versus the healthy version of detachment. And then also understanding what unity means, that it doesn't mean that we like morph into one another and that we're all the same person, but that we're very individual, we're very different, we have very different backgrounds, we have very different current situations, that each of us is very customized, which is why I love the coaching process, because it approaches you in that customized way. But that it doesn't matter what stage of your life you're in, and what that looks like, or even like the biological things that you're up against. At the end of the day, where we all are the same is the constituency, right? It's like we are made from the same stuff. We ultimately have the same origins,
Yes.
and our mission in life is the same, which is to be whole and be happy and be healthy.
Yeah.
And so, it is it's a wonderful platform for building wellness, the coaching, because like you said, the education is there, but it's really about the client. It's really about how they're coming in, how they're showing up, all of those things, and being able to mirror that back at them so they can get a real clear vision of where they're celebrating themselves and where there still needs to be adjustments. So, Ruby, where can everybody find you? What's the best way to find you?
So the best way, my website is www.wellness, so WELLNESS with ruby.com. And then also my Instagram is wellness with 3 L's, so WELLNESS with Ruby. So either way, you could DM me on Instagram or send me an email through my website. My email address I can just give you as well. It's it's wellnesswithruby@gmail.com. So that could be, you can just send an email there, or again, you can access that on my website.
Awesome. Well, I encourage you all at least to go follow Ruby on Instagram, because she is very active in her content. She does all kinds of live workouts. She is starting to do more of this kind of stuff with the live podcast. She has her own IGTV channel as she's doing lives. And I have the inside scoop. I know she's developing some really awesome programs that are going to be birthing themselves in the future. So get on board now, so you'll be able to be a part of those wellness journeys when they're ready to launch. And Ruby, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
Yes, thank you so much. This was so awesome. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody that tuned in today to listen. We hope that you took something away for yourself from this, and that you'll come back next time for some more. And if you haven't already, come find me on Instagram at Jenny Israel CPC. You can visit my website for more information on how to book a one-on-one, virtual or in person, at www.jennyisrael.com. And we are wishing you all a beautiful weekend and lots of health and happiness. And until the next time, love you guys.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to Soul Speak. I'm Jenny Israel, medical intuitive, energy healer, spiritual activator, counselor, and teacher. You can learn more by following me on Facebook or Instagram at Jenny Israel CPC. That's Jenny Israel, and then the letter CPC. If you would like to receive more messages from Spirit directly to your mailbox, visit jennyisrael.com, scroll down to the bottom, and subscribe to my newsletter. You can also contact me through my website or social media to set up a one-on-one session or to check out my upcoming spiritual development classes. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please help support my show by giving it a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts. Spirit and I will speak to you again soon. Blessings and light to all.